My name is Jasper Coleman, but most people just call me Grandpa Jasper. I'm 72 years old, and after 25 silent years, 25 years without a call, a visit, or even a birthday message, I learned what loneliness really feels like. But on a day that should have been ordinary, everything changed. I was sitting in my old armchair when my name, my forgotten name, appeared on national television. Not for drama, not for scandal, but for something far more unexpected. And within minutes, the phones that had gathered dust for decades began to ring, one after another. Voices I hadn't heard in half a lifetime, suddenly remembering I existed. They didn't call out of love. They called out of curiosity, fear, greed. And none of them knew that the moment my name appeared on that screen, a plan I'd been building quietly finally came alive. Because for 25 years, I watched, I listened, I waited, and I learned exactly who deserved a place in my life and who didn't. I'm going to tell you what they said to me, how quickly they switched their stories, and why that TV appearance wasn't an accident. But before I begin, tell me in the comments, how long could you forgive someone who abandoned you? To everyone supporting this community, thank you. And if this is your first time here, hit like, subscribe, and the bell. You're not just joining a channel. You're joining a family that understands the pain of being forgotten and the strength of rising anyway. Now, let me tell you exactly what happened after that broadcast. I want you to picture something with me. A small, one-bedroom apartment on the third floor of a building that's seen better days. The elevator hasn't worked in 6 months. The wallpaper is peeling near the window where the sun hits it every afternoon. Inside, there's one coffee mug in the dish rack, one plate, one fork, one spoon. That's my world. I live alone in 847 square feet, and I've memorized every crack in the ceiling. Sometimes at night I trace them with my eyes and pretend they're maps to places I'll never visit. My name is on the lease. My name is on the mailbox. But for 25 years, I felt like a ghost haunting my own life. Let me tell you about Tuesday. Tuesday was my 72nd birthday. I woke up at 6:47 a.m., 7 minutes before my alarm, like always. My body doesn't sleep well anymore. Too many thoughts. Too much silence that somehow feels louder than noise ever did. I made coffee. Black. No sugar. Not because I like it that way, but because I stopped buying sugar 3 years ago when I realized nobody was coming over to share it with me. I sat at my small kitchen table and stared at my phone, waiting. Because even after all these years, some stupid part of me still hopes. At 9:23 a.m., the phone finally buzzed. A text message from Athena, my eldest daughter, 45 years old, corporate lawyer in Boston. Last time I saw her in person, she was 20 and angry at me for reasons I still don't fully understand. The message said, "Happy birthday, Dad." That's it. No, "I love you." No, "How are you feeling?" Just a generic text that probably took her 3 seconds to type while she was waiting for her latte at some expensive coffee shop I've never been to. I stared at that cake emoji for 15 minutes. Then I typed back, "Thank you, sweetheart. Would love to hear your voice sometime." I never got a response. By noon, I'd received 3 more birthday messages. Callie sent a GIF. Bryson sent HBD pops. Weston didn't send anything at all. 4 children. 4 human beings I brought into this world, changed diapers for, stayed up all night with when they had fevers, taught to ride bikes and tie shoes and believe in themselves. And this is what our relationship had become. Emojis, abbreviations, silence. I want to tell you something I've never said out loud before. I keep a journal, have for years. And in that journal, I track every single attempt I've made to reach out to my children. Last year alone, I sent 52 birthday cards, anniversary cards, and thinking of you cards. I made 73 phone calls that went to voicemail. I sent 104 text messages. You want to know how many times they reached out to me first? 4 times. 4 times in 365 days. and 3 of those were automated calendar reminders that popped up on their phones because their mother, God rest her soul, used to put every family birthday in their calendars when they were kids. That Tuesday night I sat in my armchair, the same one I've sat in every evening for 15 years. The fabric is worn thin on the armrests where my hands rest. There's a permanent dent in the cushion, shaped exactly like my body. I turned on the evening news because the silence was crushing me. The anchor was a young woman, probably in her 30s, with perfect makeup and a voice that sounded like she was reading a bedtime story. She was talking about local interest stories. Something about a dog that saved a family from a fire. Something about a high school basketball team that won the state championship. I wasn't really listening. I was looking at the photos on my shelf across the room. Photos of people who used to need me. Athena in her college graduation gown. Callie at her wedding. A wedding I attended but wasn't asked to walk her down the aisle for. Bryson holding his first child. My first grandchild. A boy I've met exactly twice. Weston at his tech company's grand opening. He never invited me. And then I heard it. My name. Jasper Coleman. I looked up at the television screen, certain I'd misheard. But there it was. My name. In bold white letters against a blue background. And beneath it, my face. An old photo from maybe 10 years ago, back when I still combed my hair with purpose and wore button-down shirts instead of the same gray sweater I've been rotating through for the past 5 years. The anchor smiled warmly at the camera. Tonight, we're honored to spotlight a local hero who's been working in the shadows for over 2 decades. Jasper Coleman, a 72-year-old resident of our community, has quietly donated over $8.7 million to charitable causes throughout the region. I stopped breathing. From funding youth education programs to supporting homeless shelters and cancer research facilities, Mr. Coleman has touched thousands of lives, all while maintaining complete anonymity. Until now. The screen showed footage I didn't remember being filmed. Me at a ribbon-cutting ceremony for a community center. Me shaking hands with someone at what looked like a hospital fundraiser. Me handing an oversized check to a women's shelter director. We reached out to Mr. Coleman for comment, but in true humble fashion he declined to be interviewed. However, sources close to him confirm that his generosity stems from a deeply personal mission to help others after experiencing his own family tragedy decades ago. Family tragedy. That's what they called my wife's death. That's what they called watching my children disappear from my life one phone call at a time. The anchor continued, her voice dripping with admiration I didn't feel I deserved. Mr. Coleman's foundation is set to make a major announcement in the coming weeks regarding an expansion of his philanthropic work. We'll continue to follow this inspiring story. Then my name disappeared from the screen, replaced by a commercial for car insurance. I sat there in that worn armchair, my heart pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. And then, for the first time in 25 years, my phone rang. Not a text, not an email, an actual phone call. I looked at the screen. Bryson. I stared at his name for 3 rings before I answered. Dad? His voice sounded exactly the same, maybe a little deeper, a little more tired, but the same. I just saw you on TV. Oh my God, Dad, why didn't you tell us? I opened my mouth to respond, but no words came out. Because the truth was sitting in my throat like a stone, and if I said it out loud, everything would shatter. I didn't tell you because you never asked. You never called. You never cared enough to wonder what I was doing with my life. But I didn't say that. Instead, I said, "It's good to hear from you, son." Before he could respond, my phone beeped. Another call coming in. Athena. Dad, I need to put you on hold for just a second. Your sister's calling. Wait, I want to... Click. I switched to Athena's call. Dad, I can't believe what I just saw. Are you okay? Why didn't you tell any of us about this? 25 years of silence, and suddenly everyone wanted to talk. My phone kept buzzing. Callie. Then a number I didn't recognize. Then Weston. Then Callie again. I sat there in my apartment, holding that phone, listening to voice after voice after voice. And all I could think was, where were you last Tuesday when I turned 72 alone? Where were you last Christmas when I ate frozen dinners by myself? Where were you every single day for 25 years when I needed to hear your voice more than I needed air? I looked across the room at my desk. At the locked drawer I haven't opened in 6 months. Inside that drawer is a folder. And inside that folder is everything. Every plan. Every document. Every piece of evidence I've been collecting for years. Because that broadcast? That wasn't luck. That wasn't coincidence. That was the beginning of something I'd been building in the dark for longer than they could imagine. I smiled for the first time in weeks. "Athena," I said calmly, "why don't you come by tomorrow? Let's talk in person." There was a pause. Then, "Of course, Dad. I'll clear my schedule. I'll bring everyone. We should all be there." "Perfect," I said. "I'll see you at 10. After I hung up, I walked to my desk and unlocked that drawer. I pulled out the folder and opened it slowly. Inside were photographs, financial records, letters I'd written but never sent, phone logs, calendar entries, 25 years of documentation, 25 years of proof. I ran my fingers over the papers and whispered to the empty room, "Right on schedule." They arrived at 9:47 a.m., 13 minutes early. I watched from my window as they pulled up in 3 separate cars. Athena in a black Mercedes, Callie in a white Range Rover, Bryson and Weston arriving together in what looked like a Tesla. Sleek, expensive, the kind of car that screams success. I hadn't seen them pull up to my building in over 2 decades. Now there were 3 luxury vehicles parked where my rusted 2009 Honda usually sat alone. Funny how money changes parking arrangements. I didn't rush to the door. I made them knock, made them wait, made them stand in the hallway outside apartment 3C like strangers, because that's what we'd become. When I finally opened the door, I studied each of their faces. Athena looked exactly like her mother. Same sharp cheekbones. Same way of holding her jaw when she was nervous. She was wearing a navy pantsuit that probably cost more than my monthly rent. Her hair was pulled back so tight it made her face look severe. "Dad." She moved forward to hug me, and I let her, but my arms felt stiff, mechanical, like I was embracing a mannequin. Callie was next. She'd gained weight, not much, but enough that I noticed. Her eyes were red, like maybe she'd been crying in the car, or maybe she just hadn't slept. She smelled like expensive perfume and desperation. "I can't believe it's been so long," she whispered against my shoulder. "Yes, you can," I thought. "You made it that long on purpose." Bryson looked the most uncomfortable. He was broader than I remembered. Working out, probably. His handshake was too firm, overcompensating for something. He wore designer jeans and a polo shirt with a logo I didn't recognize. "You look good, Pops," he said, but his eyes were scanning my apartment, taking inventory, calculating value. Weston came in last. He barely looked at me. Just a quick nod, hands in his pockets, already glancing at his phone. "Nice place," he said, but his tone made it clear he meant the opposite. They filed into my small living room, and suddenly the space felt even smaller. Like they were taking up oxygen I couldn't spare. I'd set out 5 chairs in a semicircle. The 4 kitchen chairs for them, and my armchair for me. It looked like a therapy session. Or an intervention. Maybe it was both. "Can I get anyone coffee?" I asked. Athena checked her watch. A Rolex, I noticed. "Actually, Dad, I have a meeting at 1, so maybe we should dive right in." 25 years, and she had an hour to spare. I nodded, slowly. "Of course. Wouldn't want to waste your time." She didn't catch the edge in my voice, or maybe she did and chose to ignore it. I sat down in my chair, and they arranged themselves in front of me. 4 faces I'd memorized as babies. 4 people I didn't know anymore. "So," Bryson started, leaning forward with his elbows on his knees. "Dad, $8.7 million. That's, that's incredible. I had no idea you had that kind of money. You never asked. The room went quiet. Callie jumped in quickly, her voice too bright. What he means is, we're just so proud of you. All those donations, all those people you've helped. It's amazing. Is it? I looked at her, really looked at her. You think it's amazing that I gave away almost $9 million to strangers? She blinked. Well, yes, it's generous. But not to you. Another silence, heavier this time. Weston was the first to break. Okay, what's going on here? We came because you asked us to. We saw you on TV and wanted to celebrate with you. Did you? I reached down beside my chair and pulled out the folder I'd prepared, the one I'd been building for years. Or did you come because you're wondering if there's more money, and whether you're entitled to any of it? Athena stiffened. Dad, that's not fair. Fair? I opened the folder slowly. Let's talk about fair, Athena. When was the last time you called me? I texted you yesterday, for your birthday. Before that? She hesitated. I don't know. A few months ago? 7 months. It was Easter. You sent a gif of a bunny. I pulled out a printed log of text messages. Before that, it was Christmas. Before that, Thanksgiving. 3 messages in a year, all holidays, all generic. I turned to Bryson. You called me twice last year. Once to ask if I still had your grandfather's old watch. Once to tell me you couldn't make it to lunch we'd scheduled 3 weeks in advance. His face went red. Callie. I looked at my middle daughter, the one who used to climb into my lap and make me read the same bedtime story 5 times in a row. You invited me to your son's birthday party last June. Do you remember what happened? Her lip trembled. You couldn't make it. I could make it. I RSVP'd, yes. I bought him a gift. I took the bus 45 minutes to your house. My voice cracked slightly, and I hated myself for it. I stood on your porch and rang the doorbell for 10 minutes. Nobody answered. So I called you. You texted me back 3 hours later saying the party had been family only. A tear rolled down Callie's cheek. Dad, I am family, Callie. Or at least, I thought I was. Weston stood up abruptly. This is bullshit. You're guilt-tripping us for living our own lives? Sit down, Weston. Something in my voice made him freeze. Maybe it was the coldness. Maybe it was the authority I hadn't used in decades. But he sat. I'm not guilt-tripping anyone, I said quietly. I'm just laying out facts. For 25 years I have reached out to each of you. Consistently. Desperately. I sent cards, gifts, messages. I showed up to events when I was invited, which was rare. I called on birthdays and holidays and random Tuesdays just to hear your voices. I pulled out more papers from the folder. Call logs, copies of cards with my handwriting, screenshots of unanswered texts. And in return, I got silence. Occasional emojis, excuses, and the overwhelming sense that I was bothering you every single time I reminded you I existed. Athena's professional mask was cracking. Dad, after Mom died, you changed. You were angry all the time. You pushed us away. I did, I nodded. For maybe a year, maybe 2. I was drowning in grief and I didn't know how to swim. I admit that. But 25 years, Athena? You couldn't forgive me for 2 bad years? Nobody answered. I went to therapy, I continued. Did you know that? Starting when I was 62, 10 years ago. I worked through my grief, my anger, all of it. I tried to rebuild bridges, but every time I reached out you were too busy, too far away, too done with me. Bryson's voice was small. We had our own lives, Dad. I know, and I'm not saying you had to drop everything for me. But a phone call once a month? A visit once a year? Was that really too much to ask from the people I sacrificed everything for? The apartment felt suffocating. Callie was crying openly now. Athena was staring at her hands. Bryson looked sick. Weston was still on his phone, which told me everything I needed to know. I stood up slowly, my knees aching. That broadcast yesterday, that interview on TV, I paid for it. 4 heads snapped up. What? Athena whispered. I paid a public relations firm to coordinate that segment. I fed them the information. I gave them the photos. I orchestrated the entire thing. Why would you? Because I needed to know. My voice was steady now, clear. I needed to know if you would ever reach out to me for me, or if it would take money to make me visible again. I walked to the window and looked out at their expensive cars. And now I know. Within an hour of that broadcast, all 4 of you called. After 25 years of silence, you suddenly remembered I existed the moment you thought there was money involved. That's not true. Callie stood up. I've missed you, Dad. I have. I didn't know how to fix what was broken. You start by showing up, Callie. You start by calling. You start by giving a damn. I turned back to face them. Here's what's going to happen. In 2 weeks, there's going to be another announcement, a bigger one, about the foundation I've created and how the money will be distributed. Their eyes were locked on me now. And all of you are invited to be part of it, but not as beneficiaries, as participants. What does that mean? Weston finally put his phone down. It means you have to earn it. Every single penny, through consistent, documented proof that you understand what family actually means. I walked back to my chair but didn't sit. I've been documenting everything for years. Every call, every missed birthday, every broken promise, and I've also been building something else, a real family. People who showed up when I needed them. People who didn't care about my bank account. Athena stood up. Dad, this isn't... A knock at the door interrupted her. Perfect timing. I smiled. That would be them now. I opened the door. Standing in the hallway was Sky, a young woman with kind eyes and a 6-year-old girl holding her hand. Behind them was Shane, a tall black man in his 40s, and Zane, my neighbor, with paint stains still on his work jeans. Everyone, I said, gesturing them inside. I'd like you to meet some people. My children stared. Sky stepped forward first, extending her hand to Athena. Hi, I'm Sky. Your father has been like a grandfather to me and my daughter Zoe for the past 7 years. Shane nodded at Bryson. Shane, I'm Mr. Coleman's physical therapist. Been working with him for 5 years, coming by every week. Zane shook Callie's hand. Zane, I live next door. Jasper's been mentoring my son for 3 years now. Helped him get into college. Little Zoe waved shyly. Hi. Grandpa Jasper reads to me every Tuesday. The room was silent. Every Tuesday. The day I turned 72 alone. Except I wasn't alone. My biological children just didn't know where to find me. Athena's voice was barely a whisper. Dad, who are these people? I looked at each of them, Sky, Shane, Zane, little Zoe, and then back at my children. They're the family I chose when the family I created chose to forget me. The silence in my apartment was so thick you could have cut it with a knife. My 4 biological children stood frozen, staring at the people I'd just introduced. Strangers to them, family to me. Athena was the first to find her voice, and when she did, it came out sharp, defensive. Dad, what is this? Some kind of ambush? I gestured for everyone to sit. Sky settled onto the couch with Zoe curled against her side. Shane took the chair near the window. Zane leaned against the wall with his arms crossed, watching my children with an expression I couldn't quite read. My biological kids remained standing, like sitting would mean surrender. This isn't an ambush, Athena, I said calmly. This is context. You wanted to know about the money, about the foundation, about what I've been doing for 25 years. Well, here it is. Bryson was staring at Sky with barely concealed suspicion. So, you've been... What? Replacing us? Before I could answer, Sky spoke up. Her voice was gentle but firm. Mr. Coleman didn't replace anyone. He showed up when I had nobody. 7 years ago, I was 25, 6 months pregnant and sleeping in my car. My family had disowned me. I was working 2 jobs and still couldn't afford rent. She looked down at Zoe, who was playing with a small stuffed rabbit. I met your father at a homeless shelter where I went for meals. He was volunteering there, serving food, talking to people, treating everyone with dignity. Her voice caught slightly. He asked me my story. Really asked, like he cared about the answer. He helped me find housing assistance, she continued, helped me apply for grants, sat with me at the hospital when Zoe was born because I had nobody else. He's been in her life every week since she was born, reading to her, teaching her to ride a bike, showing up. The emphasis on those last 2 words landed like a punch. Shane cleared his throat. I started as Mr. Coleman's physical therapist 5 years ago when he had that knee surgery. You probably didn't know about that. Callie's face went pale. Knee surgery? Torn meniscus, Shane explained. He slipped on ice outside this building. Needed surgery and 6 months of physical therapy. I came twice a week at first, then once a week. Then I just kept coming, because we became friends. He looked at me with something like affection. Your dad and I talk about everything. Sports, politics, life. He came to my daughter's high school graduation last year. He's been teaching my son chess every other Saturday for 3 years. Weston finally spoke, his voice dripping with sarcasm. So what? You all just magically appeared in his life and became one big happy family? Zane pushed off the wall. No, man. We showed up. There's a difference. He walked closer to my children, and I noticed how much taller he was than Weston, how much steadier. I moved in next door 4 years ago. Single dad, 2 kids, barely making rent working construction. My boy was failing school, getting into trouble. I didn't know what to do. He nodded toward me. Jasper knocked on my door one night because he heard my son crying through the walls. Instead of complaining about the noise, he asked if he could help. Zane's eyes were wet now. He tutored my kid every single weeknight for 2 years. Math, English, history, never asked for a dime. My son got a full scholarship to Penn State last fall. That's because of your father. Little Zoe slid off the couch and walked over to Athena. She looked up at her with those big, curious 6-year-old eyes. Are you really Grandpa Jasper's daughter? Athena looked down at her, and I watched something crack in her face. Yes, sweetheart, I am. How come you never visit him? He talks about you sometimes. He looks sad when he does. The room went completely silent. Athena knelt down to Zoe's level, and I saw her hands were shaking. I don't have a good answer for that. Zoe tilted her head. That's okay. You can start visiting now. He makes really good pancakes on Sundays. You should come. Callie made a sound that was half laugh, half sob. I stood up and walked to my desk. From the top drawer, not the locked one, I pulled out a photo album. One my children had never seen. Come here, I said quietly. All of you. They gathered around slowly, reluctantly. I opened the album to the first page. There was a photo of me and Sky at the hospital, her holding newborn Zoe. Another of me teaching Zoe to walk. One of her birthday parties, all 6 of them. I was in every single photo. I flipped through more pages. Shane's daughter's graduation, me in the audience. Zane's son's Little League games, me in the bleachers. Holiday dinners with Sky's small family, community center events. Volunteer work at the shelter, page after page of a life my children knew nothing about. This is what I've been doing, I said softly. Not sitting alone waiting for you to remember me. Living. Building relationships with people who wanted me in their lives. Bryson was staring at a photo of me and Shane's son playing chess. Why didn't you tell us about any of this? Why didn't you ask? He had no answer. I closed the album and looked at each of my children. The foundation I'm creating? It's real. The money is real, but it's not going to be distributed the way you think. Athena's lawyer instincts kicked in immediately. What do you mean? I mean, I'm not leaving you an inheritance. Not in the traditional sense. Weston's face went red. You're giving it all to them? To strangers? They're not strangers, Weston. They're family. Real family. And no, I'm not giving it all to them either. I walked back to my desk and pulled out a legal document, the one I'd had drafted 6 months ago. This is the charter for the Jasper Coleman Family Foundation. It's already established. The $8.7 million you heard about on TV, that was just the beginning. I have more. A lot more. Callie's voice was barely a whisper. How much more? Enough. I looked at her. Enough to make a real difference. But here's the thing. Nobody gets a free ride, not even Skye, Shane, or Zane. I held up the document. The foundation will be managed by a board of 5 people. I'm one. The other 4 seats are earned through demonstrated commitment to family values over a minimum of 5 years. What does that mean? Athena asked. It means showing up, consistently. Not because there's money at stake, but because that's what family does. Skye has earned her seat. So has Shane. So has Zane. There's one more seat currently being evaluated. I looked at my 4 children. And 1 seat is open, for any of you who want to earn it. Earn it how? Bryson asked. By being present. By calling not just on holidays but on random Tuesdays. By showing up when it's inconvenient. By proving that you understand what you took for granted for 25 years. Weston laughed bitterly. This is insane. You're making us audition to be your kids? No, you are my kids. Nothing changes that. But being on this board, having a say in how millions of dollars get distributed to help people, that requires more than biology. I set the document down. You have 5 years to prove yourselves. Weekly calls, monthly visits, showing up for each other and for this community. It gets documented, tracked, and at the end of 5 years, the board votes on who's earned their place. Athena was shaking her head. Dad, you can't be serious. We have lives, careers, families of our own. So did I. And I still found time to reach out to you every single week for 25 years. That landed hard. Shane stood up. We should probably go, Jasper. Let you all talk. No. I surprised myself with how quickly I said it. Stay, please. You're part of this conversation. Skye looked at my children, and I saw something like pity in her eyes. I know this is hard to hear. I know it feels unfair. But your dad isn't trying to punish you. He's trying to see if you're willing to change. And if we don't, Weston challenged, if we say this whole thing is manipulation and walk out right now? I met his eyes. Then you prove me right, and you live with that choice. The clock on my wall ticked loudly. Zoe had fallen asleep against Skye's shoulder. Outside, a siren wailed in the distance. Callie suddenly sat down hard in one of the kitchen chairs. I can't believe this is happening. Neither can I said honestly. I spent 25 years hoping you'd come back on your own. That one day you'd wake up and realize you'd abandoned your father. But you never did. So I decided to stop waiting and start living. Athena pulled out her phone, started typing something. What are you doing? I asked. Canceling my afternoon meetings. She looked up at me, and her eyes were red. You said you wanted to talk. So let's talk. Really talk. Not about money or foundations or who deserves what. About what happened to us. About why I stopped calling. About why this family fell apart. I hadn't expected that. Bryson sat down too. I'm in. Callie nodded, wiping her eyes. Me too. All 3 of them looked at Weston. He stood there with his arms crossed, jaw clenched. This is emotional blackmail. No, I said quietly. This is consequence, for both of us. For my failures as a father after your mother died, and for your choices every single day since. He stared at me for a long moment. Then he walked to the door. Weston, Callie said. Don't. He opened the door, paused, then looked back. I'll think about it." Then he was gone. I looked at my 3 remaining children, at the family I'd built in their absence, at little Zoe sleeping peacefully while the adults around her dealt with decades of damage. "Okay," I said, "let's start from the beginning." 3 weeks had passed since that meeting in my apartment. 3 weeks of the most surreal experience of my life. Athena called me every Tuesday and Thursday evening, like clockwork. We talked about work, about her failed marriage I'd known nothing about her fear of becoming like me, alone and forgotten. Callie visited twice, brought her kids the second time, my grandchildren, strangers with my daughter's eyes. It was awkward and beautiful and painful all at once. Bryson texted every morning. Just small things. "Hope you slept well. Saw this and thought of you." Each message felt like a tiny bridge being built across a canyon. Weston hadn't called once. I tried not to let it bother me. 3 out of 4 wasn't bad. Better than I'd had in 25 years. But on a rainy Thursday afternoon, my phone rang with a number I didn't recognize. "Mr. Coleman, this is Jennifer Park from the National Herald. I'm calling about your foundation and some very concerning allegations that have been brought to our attention." My blood went cold. Allegations? "Yes, sir. We've received information suggesting that your charitable donations may not be entirely legitimate, and that you've been manipulating family members through financial coercion." I sat down slowly. "Who told you this?" "I can't reveal my source, but they were very credible. They've provided documentation suggesting possible elder financial exploitation, questions about your mental competency, and concerns about how you obtained the money you've been donating." Elder exploitation, mental competency. The words were a knife between my ribs. "Ms. Park, I can assure you that every donation I've made has been thoroughly documented and legal. I have financial advisors, tax records, everything you'd need to verify." "I understand, Mr. Coleman. But the allegations are serious enough that we're running a story. I'm offering you the chance to comment before we publish. It goes live tomorrow morning." Tomorrow morning? The foundation announcement was scheduled for tomorrow afternoon. "What exactly are you accusing me of?" "Not me, sir. Your source. They claim you've been hoarding wealth while allowing your children to struggle financially. That you've created this foundation as a way to control them, and a group of vulnerable people you've befriended. That your donations might be a way to hide money from family members who have legal claims to it." Each word was carefully crafted to destroy me, and I knew exactly who had crafted them. "I need 24 hours, I said. "Mr. Coleman, 24 hours to provide you with documentation, full financial records, testimony from the people involved in my foundation, everything you need to see the truth." There was a pause. "I can give you until 8 p.m. tonight. The story is scheduled to run in the morning edition." After I hung up, I sat in my armchair staring at nothing. I'd been so focused on testing my children that I hadn't considered one of them might try to destroy me first. I called Sky. "I need everyone at my place in an hour. Emergency meeting." "What happened?" "I think we're about to find out who we can really trust." Within an hour, my apartment was full again. Sky, Shane, and Zane. Plus Athena, Callie, and Bryson, who'd dropped everything to come when I said it was urgent. Weston's chair sat empty. I told them about the phone call, about the journalist, about the allegations. Athena went pale. "Dad, that's defamation. We can sue for—" "Who would do this?" Callie interrupted. "Who would try to ruin you right before the big announcement?" We all looked at the empty chair. Bryson shook his head. "No, Weston wouldn't. He's angry, but he's not vindictive." "Isn't he?" I pulled out my phone and opened my email. "Last week, I got a message from a lawyer I've never heard of. They wanted to discuss concerns about my estate planning and mental fitness. I ignored it. Thought it was spam." I showed them the email. The lawyer's name was at the bottom. Marshall and Associates. Shane leaned forward. I know that firm. They specialize in conservatorship cases, getting family members declared mentally incompetent so someone else can control their finances. The room went silent. Athena grabbed my phone, her hands shaking. "Let me see that." She read it, and I watched her face transform from shock to fury. "Weston hired them. I recognize the partner's name. We've worked against them before." She looked up at me with tears in her eyes. "Dad, he's trying to have you declared incompetent. If he succeeds, he could take control of everything. The foundation, your assets, all of it." Callie stood up so fast her chair fell over. "I'm calling him, right now." "Wait." My voice was quiet but firm. "Don't. Dad, I know what he's doing, and I've been expecting it." They all stared at me. I walked to my desk and unlocked the drawer, the one I'd been adding to for weeks. When I said I'd been documenting everything, I meant everything. I pulled out a thick folder and set it on the coffee table. 3 weeks ago, when Weston left, I hired a private investigator. Nothing intrusive, just watching, documenting. I opened the folder. Inside were photographs, phone records, bank statements. Weston has been gambling. Badly. He's in debt to the tune of $340,000. His tech company is failing. He took out a second mortgage on his house. He's desperate. Bryson picked up one of the bank statements. Holy shit. He reached out to Marshall and Associates 4 days after that first meeting, the same day the TV broadcast aired. He's been planning this since the moment he thought there was money he could access. I pulled out another document. He also contacted that journalist, used a fake name, but the private investigator traced the email back to an IP address at Weston's office. Athena was reading through the documents, her lawyer brain processing everything. Dad, this is conspiracy, defamation, possibly fraud, depending on what he told the journalist. I know. We have to stop him. We can get an emergency injunction. We can... Athena. I put my hand on hers. Listen to me. I don't want to destroy your brother. He's trying to destroy you. Because he's desperate and scared, and yes, greedy, but he's still my son. Callie was crying openly now. What do you want to do? I looked at the empty chair, at the space Weston should have occupied but chose to abandon. Again. I want to give him a choice, just like I gave all of you. I picked up my phone and called Weston. It went to voicemail. Weston, it's your father. I know what you've been doing. I know about the lawyer, the journalist, the debt. And I know you're listening to this message right now, deciding whether to delete it or call me back. I took a breath. I'm not angry. I'm disappointed. But I'm also willing to help you. Not with money, but with a path forward that doesn't destroy you or our family. You have until 8 o'clock tonight to come to my apartment. After that, I give everything I have on you to the journalist who called me today. And I let her decide which story to run, yours or mine. I hung up. Shane whistled low. That's stone cold. No, Sky said softly. That's mercy. We waited. 7 o'clock came and went. I provided Jennifer Park with documentation of my finances, mental competency evaluations from 2 doctors, sworn statements from Shane, Sky, and Zane, and tax records going back 15 years. This is thorough, she said over the phone. Mr. Coleman, based on what you've shown me, these allegations appear to be completely false. They are. Do you know who made them? I do, but I'm hoping they'll come forward themselves. At 7:52 p.m., there was a knock at my door. I opened it. Weston stood there looking like he hadn't slept in days. His eyes were red. His clothes were wrinkled. His hands were shaking. Can I come in? I stepped aside. The room was full. Everyone was still there. Weston looked at his siblings, at the people he'd tried to make me choose over him, and something in him broke. He collapsed into the chair that had been waiting for him. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. Nobody said anything. I panicked. I saw the money and I panicked. I'm losing everything. My business is failing. I owe people money, dangerous people, and I thought if I could just destroy me first, I finished quietly. He looked up at me with tears streaming down his face. I didn't mean for it to go this far. The lawyer said it would be simple, quick, that you'd never even know. And then when the journalist called, I thought, you thought you could control the narrative. I sat down across from him. Make me the villain so you could be the victim. He nodded miserably. I pulled out the folder, showed him everything I had, watched his face go white as he realized how completely I'd documented his betrayal. This is what happens when you underestimate someone you think is weak. I'm not senile, Weston. I'm not incompetent. I'm just old. There's a difference. I set the folder down. Jennifer Park is waiting for my call. I can either tell her to run the story about my legitimate foundation and let your accusations die, or I can give her this folder and let her run a much more interesting story about a desperate son trying to steal from his elderly father. Weston was openly sobbing now. Please, please don't. It'll destroy me. I'll lose everything. You've already lost everything that matters. Athena stood up. Weston, how could you? How could you try to hurt Dad like this? Because I'm desperate, he shouted. Because none of you understand what it's like to be failing, to be drowning, to need help and have nowhere to turn. You could have asked me, I said quietly. You could have called your father and said, I need help. Instead, you tried to take what wasn't yours. Would you have helped? He looked at me with something like hope. If I'd asked. I thought about it, really thought about it. I don't know, maybe, but I would have listened. I would have tried to understand. That's more than you gave me for 25 years. The clock struck 8. I picked up my phone. Everyone held their breath. I dialed Jennifer Park. Ms. Park, Jasper Coleman. I'm calling with my final statement for your story. I looked at Weston, at my broken son who'd betrayed me because he'd learned that money mattered more than people. The allegations against me are false. I have documentation proving it. As for who made them, that's a family matter, and I'd appreciate if you'd focus your story on the foundation and the good it's trying to do rather than on family drama. Weston's head snapped up. Are you sure, Mr. Coleman? Because I have to tell you, the story about the son trying to exploit his elderly father would get a lot more clicks. I'm sure. Run the story about the foundation. That's what matters. After I hung up, Weston stared at me. Why? Because you're my son, and despite everything, I still love you. I stood up and walked to the window. But love doesn't mean trust, and it doesn't mean a place on the board. You made your choice, Weston. Now you have to live with it. I turned back to him. Get help, real help, for the gambling, for the debt, for whatever made you think destroying your father was an acceptable option. And then, maybe in 5 years, we can talk. 5 years? That's how long it takes to prove you've changed, to show consistent growth, to earn back what you threw away. He nodded slowly, defeated. I'm going to ask you to leave now, but before you do, I pulled out my checkbook, wrote a check for $50,000. This is enough to keep the dangerous people away. It's not for your business, it's for your safety, because despite everything, you're still my son, and I don't want you hurt. I handed it to him. But this is the last money you'll get from me unless you earn it. Understood? He took the check with shaking hands. Thank you. Don't thank me. Just do better. After Weston left, the apartment felt lighter somehow. Athena hugged me tight. I can't believe you protected him after what he did. He's your brother, and my son. What was I supposed to do? Most people would have destroyed him. I'm not most people. I'm his father, even when he forgets that. Shane was shaking his head with admiration. Man, you are something else. No, I'm just tired of revenge, tired of holding grudges. I wanted justice, not destruction. Sky came over with Zoe, who'd slept through most of the drama. The announcement tomorrow. Are you still going through with it? I looked around at the people in my apartment, at Callie and Bryson and Athena, who'd shown up when it mattered, at Shane and Zane, who'd never left, at Sky and little Zoe, who'd reminded me what family could look like. Yes, more than ever. Because tomorrow, the real story would begin. Subscribe if you want to see what happens at the Foundation announcement tomorrow, because there's still one more twist coming that nobody saw coming. Comment: Justice if you think I did the right thing. The community center was packed. I stood backstage adjusting my tie for the third time, listening to the murmur of voices on the other side of the curtain. 200 people, maybe more. Journalists, community leaders, representatives from the charities I'd supported over the years, and my family, both of them. Sky appeared at my elbow, smoothing down her dress. You ready for this? No, I admitted, but I don't think I'll ever be ready. So let's do it anyway. She squeezed my hand. Your children are in the front row, all 4 of them. My heart stuttered. Weston came. He's sitting at the end. Looks like he hasn't slept. But he's here. I took a deep breath. 3 weeks ago, I'd given him a choice, and apparently he'd made one. The event coordinator peeked through the curtain. Mr. Coleman, we're ready for you. This was it. The moment I'd been building toward for months. The culmination of 25 years of silence, 3 weeks of chaos, and a lifetime of learning what family really meant. I walked onto the stage. The applause was immediate and overwhelming. I blinked against the lights, found the faces in the front row. Athena was crying already. Callie was holding her hand. Bryson stood up, clapping, and Weston. Weston was staring at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. Behind them sat Shane with his family, Zane with his sons. Sky had left my side but was now settling into a seat with Zoe on her lap. 2 families, one biological, one chosen, both here. I stepped up to the microphone and the room fell silent. Thank you all for coming, I began, my voice steadier than I felt. 25 years ago, I lost my wife to cancer, and in the grief that followed, I lost myself. I became angry, withdrawn, difficult to love. I paused, gathering the words I'd rehearsed 100 times. I pushed away the people I loved most, my children, and by the time I'd found my way back to myself, they'd moved on, built their own lives, and I couldn't blame them. I'd taught them that grief was stronger than love, that pain was a reason to leave rather than stay. Athena was openly sobbing now. For 25 years, I lived with that shame, but I also lived with hope. Hope that maybe one day they'd come back, that I'd get a chance to be the father I should have been all along. I looked directly at my 4 children. That day never came, at least not the way I imagined it, but something else did. I learned that family isn't just blood. It's choice. It's showing up. It's being present even when it's hard. I gestured to Shane, Zane, and Sky. These people taught me that. They didn't owe me anything, but they gave me everything. Their time, their trust, their presence. Shane wiped his eyes. Zane nodded. Sky was holding Zoe, who waved at me from her lap. So today, I'm announcing the official launch of the Jasper Coleman Family Foundation, with an initial endowment of $12.3 million. Gasps rippled through the audience. The journalists started scribbling furiously. This foundation will focus on 3 core areas: supporting single parents, funding education for underserved youth, and providing resources for families dealing with grief and loss. I pulled out a document from my jacket pocket. The foundation will be governed by a 5-person board. I'll serve as chairman until I'm no longer able. The other 4 seats will be held by individuals who have demonstrated consistent, documented commitment to family values over a minimum period of 5 years. I looked at Sky, Shane, and Zane. 3 of those seats are already filled. Sky Martinez, Shane Patterson, and Zane Brooks have each shown what it means to be family. They've earned their place at this table." The room erupted in applause. Sky was crying. Shane stood up, overwhelmed. Zane just smiled. "The 5th seat," I continued, and the room went silent again, "is currently open. It will be awarded in 5 years to any individual who meets the criteria we've established. And yes," I looked at my biological children. "That includes my own kids." Bryson's eyes widened. Callie grabbed Athena's hand tighter. Weston was staring at the floor. "But here's the thing about that 5th seat. It's not guaranteed to anyone. Not to my children, not to anyone. It has to be earned through action, not intention. Through consistency, not convenience." I folded the document and set it down. "I spent 25 years learning a hard truth. You can't force people to love you. You can't make them show up. All you can do is decide who you want to be, and then be that person regardless of who's watching." My voice cracked. I wanted to be a father, but for too long, I didn't have anyone to father. So I fathered the people who needed me. And in doing so, I found a family I didn't know I was building. I looked out at the sea of faces. This foundation isn't about revenge. It's not about punishing anyone or proving a point. It's about taking the pain of being forgotten and transforming it into something that helps others not feel forgotten too. The applause started slowly, then built until the entire room was on its feet. I stepped away from the microphone, exhausted and exhilarated. But I wasn't done yet. As the crowd began to disperse, I asked my children to stay. All 4 of them. We gathered in a small room off to the side of the stage. Athena spoke first, her voice thick with emotion. "Dad, that was beautiful, and I'm so proud of you. But I have to ask, what about us? Where do we fit in all of this?" I sat down heavily in a chair. "That depends on you." "We're trying," Callie said desperately. "We've been calling, visiting. We're showing up now." "I know, and I see that. I do." I looked at each of them. But 3 weeks doesn't erase 25 years. It's a start. It's a good start. But it's still just a start. Bryson leaned forward. "So, what do we need to do? Tell us. We'll do it." "Keep showing up," I said simply. "Not because there's money involved, not because you feel guilty, but because you want to, because you've decided that having a relationship with your father matters to you." Weston finally spoke, his voice hoarse. "What about me? After what I did?" I looked at my youngest son, the one who'd tried to destroy me out of desperation, the one I'd saved anyway. "You have the same opportunity as your siblings, but you have farther to climb. Trust isn't rebuilt overnight, maybe not even in 5 years. But if you're willing to do the work, real work, not just showing up when it's convenient, then yes, there's a place for you too." He nodded, tears streaming down his face. "I'm getting help. Real help. Therapy. Gamblers Anonymous. I'm selling my house, downsizing, paying off my debts. I'm trying to fix what I broke." "Good. Keep doing that. Not for me, not for the foundation. For yourself." Athena stood up and walked over to me. She knelt down so we were eye level. "I'm sorry, Dad, for all of it. For letting years pass without fighting harder to fix what was broken. For taking the easy way out. For forgetting that you were alone while I was busy with my life." I cupped her face the way I used to when she was little. "I forgive you. I forgave you a long time ago. But forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. It just means we get to start over, if we both choose to." "I choose to," she whispered. "I choose you." Callie and Bryson joined us, and suddenly I was surrounded by my children, really surrounded by them, for the first time in decades. Even Weston eventually stood and joined the embrace, hanging back slightly, but there nonetheless. We stood like that for a long time. Crying, healing, beginning. When we finally pulled apart, I said, "This doesn't fix everything. We have a lot of work to do, a lot of conversations to have, a lot of time to make up for. We know, Bryson said, but we're here now, and we're not leaving again. I wanted to believe him. God, I wanted to believe all of them. But 25 years had taught me that promises are easy. It's the follow-through that matters. Okay, I said, then let's take it one day at a time. One call, one visit, one choice to show up, and we'll see where we are in 5 years. They all nodded. As we walked out of the room together, I felt something I hadn't felt in a quarter century. Hope. Not the desperate, clinging hope of someone waiting for scraps, but the quiet, steady hope of someone who'd learned to build a life worth living, regardless of who chose to be part of it. 6 months later, I sat in my doctor's office staring at test results I'd been avoiding for 3 years. Dr. Patel folded her hands on her desk, her expression a mix of compassion and professionalism. Jasper, the memory issues you've been experiencing, they're not just normal aging. The tests show early-stage Alzheimer's. We caught it early, which is good, but we need to talk about what this means for you moving forward. I'd known. Deep down, I'd known for months. The forgotten appointments, the moments where I couldn't remember if I'd eaten breakfast, the way names sometimes slipped away from me like water through fingers. That's why I'd accelerated everything. The broadcast, the foundation, the ultimatum to my children, because I'd been running out of time, and I knew it. How long do I have? I asked. Before it gets bad? Everyone's different. Could be 5 years, could be 10. But Jasper, with early intervention, medication, and support, you can maintain quality of life for a significant period. I nodded slowly. I need you to document this, thoroughly, and I need you to set up a plan with my lawyer for when I can no longer make decisions for myself. You're thinking about medical power of attorney? Among other things. When I left the office, I didn't go home. Instead, I went to the Foundation's new office, a small space we'd rented with 3 desks, a conference table, and photos on the walls of all the people we'd helped so far. Skye was there working on grant applications. She looked up when I walked in. Hey, Grandpa Jasper, how was your appointment? I sat down across from her. I need to tell you something. I told her everything. About the diagnosis. About the real reason I'd pushed everything forward so quickly. About my fear that I'd spent 25 years being forgotten, and now my own mind was going to forget everything that mattered. She listened without interrupting, tears rolling down her cheeks. Does anyone else know? She finally asked. My lawyer, my doctor, and now you. Your children. Don't know, and I'm not ready to tell them yet. They're just starting to show up. I don't want their presence to be about pity or obligation. Skye reached across the table and took my hand. You're scared they'll leave again. I nodded. Or worse, they'll stay because they feel they have to, because I'm sick and helpless. I don't want that. I want them to choose me because they want to, not because they have to. So, what are you going to do? I pulled out an envelope from my jacket. This is a letter, to be opened in 5 years, or sooner if my condition deteriorates significantly. It explains everything, the diagnosis, the timeline, the real reason behind the foundation and the 5-year requirement, which was to see if they could be consistent when I was still myself, to know that the relationships we're rebuilding are real, not born from crisis or guilt, because if they can show up for 5 years while I'm healthy, then maybe, I can trust them to make good decisions for me when I'm not. Skye squeezed my hand tighter. That's why the board. That's why you needed people you could trust in place before I can't trust myself anymore. Yes. We sat in silence for a moment. The 5th board seat, she said quietly. You're hoping one of your children earns it, because then you'll know someone who loves you will have a say in your care. Smart girl. And if none of them do? I smiled sadly. Then I know I have you, Shane and Zane. And honestly, that's more than I ever expected to have. That night, I had dinner at Athena's house. She'd invited me over, actually invited me, with a real phone call and everything. Her kids were there, my grandchildren. We ate pasta and talked about school and work and normal things. After dinner, Athena walked me to my car. "Dad, can I ask you something?" "Anything." "Why now? Why did you decide to do all of this? The foundation, reaching out to us through that broadcast. Why now and not years ago?" I looked at my daughter, really looked at her, and considered telling her the truth. But I wasn't ready yet. We weren't ready yet. Because I finally learned that I couldn't wait for life to happen to me. I had to make it happen, even if it meant forcing everyone's hand. She hugged me tight. "I'm glad you did. I'm glad you didn't give up on us." I never gave up, sweetheart. I just learned to live while I waited. As I drove home, I thought about the letter in my lawyer's office, about the diagnosis I was keeping secret, about the family I'd built and the family I was rebuilding. I had 5 years, maybe less, maybe more, but for the first time in 25 years, I wasn't spending those years alone. My phone buzzed, a text from Callie. "Same time next Sunday? The kids want to make you breakfast." Then Bryson. "Found an old photo of us from when I was 10. Remember that fishing trip? Made me smile. Hope you're having a good night." And finally, surprisingly, Weston. 90 days sober today. Therapy is hard but helping. Thanks for not giving up on me." I pulled over and read those messages 3 times. Then I forwarded them to my lawyer with a note. "Add these to the file. Evidence of consistency. This is what I was hoping for." Because here's what I'd learned in 72 years of life, 25 years of loneliness, and 6 months of tentative reconciliation. You can't control how people love you. You can't force them to show up, but you can control who you become in the waiting. You can build a life worth living, regardless of who's watching. You can create a family from the people who choose you, even when biology walks away. And if you're lucky, if you're very, very lucky, the people you created might find their way back before it's too late. Not because you forced them, not because you manipulated them, but because they finally understood what they'd been missing all along. Me. Just me. Imperfect, aging, sometimes difficult, but always, always their father. And for now, for these 5 years, that was enough. This is Grandpa Jasper's story. But maybe it's your story too. If you've ever felt invisible to the people who should see you most, you're not alone. If you've ever had to build a new family from scratch, you're not alone. If you've ever wondered whether forgiveness means letting people walk all over you, it doesn't. It means setting boundaries while keeping your heart open. This channel is about real stories of real pain and real resilience. If this story moved you, hit that subscribe button and join this family, because here, we show up for each other. Drop a comment telling me, what would you have done in Jasper's position? And remember, you are not forgotten. You are not invisible. You are exactly where you need to be. Thank you for being here. I'll see you in the next story. Grandpa Jasper, subscribe, like to comment, share.